It's actually a really difficult question, and whenever I'm asked something like that, I never can come up with an answer. But the first thing that does come to mind is actually Octavia Butler's Dawn, just because I thoroughly enjoy that sci-fi novel, and it actually gets to some really deep issues, stuff around kinship, race, sexuality, gender, interracial, interspecies, I guess. Desire, if you can even call it that, sort of bodily form and how it changes, things like that. And it's actually just a really fun and kind of engaging read. And so I always think that's actually really important to think about the experience of reading, also the experience of watching films, that there is some kind of experience to be had rather than just something that feels like it's just all about the mind. So Octavia Butler's Dawn, and it's part of a trilogy, but Dawn is my favorite. What's the most challenging? I think there's so much. There's so much going on there. I think that first and foremost, I think that because college students, when they're coming here to the university, they are really idealistic and also really want to do well, I think. And so part of what happens, I think, in the classroom, also because of high school and all the previous schooling, is that people think that they kind of have to just, when they go to class, it's about following the rules and doing well in that way. And I think a lot of times people don't think of like each experience in the classroom as something new. And maybe, so there's an emphasis on the grades, there's an emphasis on doing well, but I think the classroom interaction is really important, especially for people that have never met different kinds of people. And so what's hard is to get students to think about that experience as something that's just a process, and it's also something that's actually really important as part of coming to school, basically, coming to the university, and having that interaction with other students and with me be actually something that's also valuable and also real and something that shapes you. So I think that's one thing that's really hard about college students. I think, understandably, they're they want to get through, they want to do well, and right, and so stuff like that. The other thing is that I think a lot of folks are coming from really different places, and I think there are a lot of preconceptions around who people are, what they're going to be like. All of us learn stuff before we get to places where we meet other kinds of people, through books, through television, through films, all this other kind of stuff, or through what people tell us already. So it's hard to get people to kind of reflect on that and also kind of put that aside and really kind of learn from what you can in terms of the materials being presented in class, in terms of who's in classes, who might be not even represented in the class at the university, stuff like that. So I think that's the biggest challenge, yeah. Inspired me. I don't know. I think inspiration is kind of probably too large for to kind of capture why I went. To be honest, like I was really, really burnt out. I was a community-based activist through small, very small community-based organizations funded through foundations, and so I had done that for about 7 years after undergrad, and I'd gotten really burnt out doing that because I was working so much, and also the goals were so large. But I mean, to be honest, the research path or graduate school in particular really kind of seemed like a good place to go, because not only because I was burnt out, but really because there were certain things I was thinking through, and I didn't have the space to do that in the kinds of work I was doing. And so in a fairly idealistic way, I thought, if I went to grad school, and especially if I did my emphasis on sort of queer, trans, immigrant, diasporic, and also of color communities, that I would also get to think about some of the political activism I was already doing in sort of a larger way. And I did get to do that, but I didn't realize how much basically the university at the grad level was also an economy, right? And so I was doing the same level of kind of grueling work in some ways, in different ways, even though it was enjoyable too. And so, but that's the original reason why I went back to school at the graduate level to do research, because I wanted to kind of think through some larger questions and kind of link my political activism to kind of different bodies of knowledge and theory, and also histories. So that's why I went back. Yeah. I have a lot of fantasies around having become sort of a film director, even though it was extremely hard for, non-Euro-American men to actually ever make it in the film industry. But there are a lot of folks who are doing independent filmmaking, do-it-yourself stuff, and that stuff that's really inspired me, especially in queer trans communities, different communities of color. So I would have probably tried to go along that path had I sort of found film, and also had I known that was really kind of accessible to me earlier on. The other path was probably I would have still continued with my community-based activist work. I would probably be even more burnt out, but I would have still found different pockets to do it in. So those are probably the two directions I would have gone. It's all about the same to me. Like, I feel like it's actually just really hard work. I think, okay, if it were 500 pages of someone I really loved and was inspired by, I would definitely go with that, because writing is actually really difficult. Unless it's more like subjective writing, which I can do very, very quickly. But I also really love writing on topics that I really feel inspired by. So they're kind of similar to me, but I do think that the two are actually really difficult, and I think there's a way in which there's like a little bit of like pain and pleasure involved in doing both of those things. So it really depends. Yeah. I don't. Maybe it's just sort of cities that I've like driven through in. Like I did some traveling when I used to live in Louisiana, Texas. We did a lot of traveling outside of the state and across states, and some of the cities I drove through, I mean, it could be in any state, it can be in California and Ohio. I didn't necessarily want to stop necessarily, I'll be honest. I've had some strange experiences where people are not quite friendly to me, And so those are spots I wouldn't necessarily want to visit. I didn't quite visit them. I don't know if there are other places where I've actually decided to visit that I wouldn't want to go back. I've had pretty good experiences. So, yeah, I'm trying to think. I've had really grueling experiences traveling, but I don't think there's a place I wouldn't want to go back. Yeah. I mean, I really do still believe in sort of the public vision of the university. I think that's ideally what it should be in terms of its accessibility. I know there are problems with that from the get-go in terms of who gets to come and all the structural things that happen to low-income communities, communities of color, gender non-conforming, sexual non-conforming communities, immigrants, right? Even before people are like that make OSU inaccessible to people. But I still think the public vision of the university is actually one that I would still really kind of root for and sort of continue to idealize. I don't think it necessarily exists right now because of all the sort of the corporate structures that are being put into place across the country, even more so. So I think that's the best version of it, because I think that there is still that kind of possibility that we're fighting for a really diverse makeup of the student population, where folks do get to come in and with all their pre-existing knowledges and get to kind of engage in these conversations with other people, and you get to use like the resources here, whether it be the library, the digital media, technologies, things like that, all of that to sort of really facilitate your own knowledge formation. And I think, I think that makes OSU sort of a great place that's a potentially even greater place with its own sets of issues and problems that are bigger than just OSU. But what I really love about OSU, I've really, really enjoyed teaching and having working relationships with the students. I think a lot of the folks are really, really inspiring in terms of where they're coming from, what they're really trying to achieve, and also what they bring into all the classrooms and all the conversations I've had with them. And so I really like that aspect of it. And also, some of the colleagues I've met are some of the most brilliant folks and hardworking folks that I've met, and so that's been fantastic.